Password file is the topic. Now I want to ask you one fundamental question. Password file, there is only one command that you need to know about the password file. What do we need to know? First thing I will tell you, there is only one command, ORAPWD, correct? Then there is one view which is $PW file users. I keep forgetting that view. Hold on a second. Is it that PW file users? File underscores user, no? Yeah, that is one. See, this is one of the very few views which has a S in it. Or is it not? Let me see. Read all the PW file users. And then the third thing is an init.ora parameter that you need to know is remote. I'll write it down here. 3 remote login password file. Remote login password file, remote underscore login underscore password file is the init.ora parameter. So these are the only 3 things that we need to learn in this section. So it's a very small topic here, but I think the understanding of why the password file is required is very critical. So let me ask you one fundamental question there. How do you log into a database as a user, U1, who is a very small user, normal user? Let us say the answer to that is SQL plus U1 and slash his password also is U1. This is the way you would log into a database. Now at this time, if the user is successfully logged into the database instance, is the instance running? The answer is yes, the instance is running. Otherwise, user will not be able to log in, correct? Why user will not be able to log in when the database instance is not running or if not open? Okay, database instance may be in a mount phase but not open. Will the user be able to log in? No. Why? Because his password is stored where? In the DB underscore users. And where is DB underscore users is? In the system table space. And in the data, if the database is not in the open state, none of the table spaces are accessible. Okay, so no user can log in there because the password cannot be found out. So that is one of the reasons. There are many other reasons, but password cannot be found out. Now, my next question is, how do you start up an instance? If it's totally shut down, how do you start up an instance? First, you have to log in, correct? First, you have to log in with using what command? SQL plus, you do slash as sysdba. You log into a database, but database is not running. How can you log into a database if it is not running?
We are setting that export.
But okay, here I can also set the export. Will I be able to log in the database? No. Here I cannot log. I mean, I am logging into a database. I do get the SQL prompt, correct? I do get the SQL prompt, and I fire the command startup. So does that mean and then have I given any password or login ID? No.
No, sys user has the privilege to log in without password.
So if the sys user has a privilege to log in without password, does that mean anybody can log into a database without the password?
He has some privileges.
So I mean, what is it? See, I am doing a very important task of starting up a database.
Super user of basically.
Startup, and I am not being even asked a password. What kind of security is this?
OS level authentication.
This is the OS level authentication. Okay, as you can see here, I am starting up a database. I can shut down a database. For that, I need to log in, and I am not being even asked a password. How is that possible? I mean, what kind of security is this? So this is possible because you have some OS level security. You are logged into the operating system with some special OS authentication privileges. And I think we have seen this thing. If you are logged into a Unix operating system with any user, doesn't need to be a user named Oracle. It can be any user, a user named Shaker. And if that user has a DBA role, sorry, not DBA role, DBA group. On Unix we call it as a group. So if the DBA group is assigned to that, then that user can log in like this, and then only he can do a startup and a shutdown. So this is a very important prerequisite. So if I give a Unix login ID password, I think you should immediately go and check what kind of power that Unix login ID has by typing the command groups. It's a Unix command So you type it at the Unix prompt and type the command groups. Once you type the command groups, it will show you what groups your Unix ID belongs to, what groups you belong to, and then if you see DBA there as one of the groups, then that means you have the authority to log in with this command. If you are not a member of a DBA group, you cannot execute this command. You will get a error message called as insufficient privileges. So here my fundamental question is, to start up a database, you have to log in. At that time, the passwords are obviously not accessible because passwords are inside the system table space. And since you have to log in inside the database to start up, there has to be a mechanism, to allow any powerful user to log into a database with an external authentication. External means the database login ID passwords are stored outside the database, not inside the database in the system table space. So some kind of external mechanism has to be there to check whether this user is powerful or not. And one of that external mechanisms is that he should be a member of a DBA group. So that is number one. Now number two, there is another mechanism, and that mechanism is even if you are not a member of a DBA group on the Unix machine, and by the way, on the Windows machine, it's a Aura, I keep forgetting that, Aura DBA. There is a ORA DBA. This is the name of the group on the Windows machine. If your Windows user ID is a member of this group, then you can start up and shut down the database without the login ID password. It looks like we are starting up without the login ID password, but actually we are not. We are logging into that user, operating system user, with some login ID password, and you have been trusted by the database. So this OR DBA, this is on Windows and this is on Unix. The second method now, the first method was what? First method is the OS authentication. And now the second method is the password file authentication. Password file authentication. It means you are authenticated with the help of the passwords and the login IDs that are stored in a password file. Where is this password file staying? It is on the operating system. So you can do something like this, SQL plus, then let us say my name is Shekhar, my password is ABCD, as sysdba, This is what you will type. We earlier did not type the login ID, we earlier did not type the password. That's why we had just slash as sysdba. Now we'll be typing the login ID and the password. Now where is this login ID and the password stored? It is inside a password file. So our job, and that is what the external authentication is. The password file is a separate entity. Login ID passwords of the sys guys, only sys guys, or sysdba guys, they are stored inside the password file, and therefore the authentication happens with the help of the password file. And this allows us to do certain thing like this, SQL plus login ID slash password as sysdba and the @ sign and the connection string. @ sign and the connection string. So this is like a very fundamental small concept, that you are on a different machine and you would like to log on to a database on a different machine, and you do not have the credentials of the operating system on which the database is running. You do not have the login ID and the password of the operating system on which the database is running. So what do? From this machine, you try to log in as sysdba and with the connection string. Where is the password stored? The password is stored in a file called as a password file on the actual operating system where the database is running. So this is what the concept of password file is. This is what a concept of password file is. How to create a password file? There is a command, Unix command called as orapwd, and then there is an initialization parameter that you need to set, and then you can find out which users are inside the password file by going after this view. So we will look at these commands in the next section, but this is what the concept of a password file is. Let me summarize this thing. To start up and shut down the database, we need to log into a database. there has to be certain outside the database mechanism to check whether you are allowed to log into a database or not. There are two mechanisms like that. One is the OS authentication. That means if you are a member of a DBA group, you are authenticated automatically. You don't need to give the login ID password. And second way is to do it with the help of the password file. You use either of them, not both. I mean, both may work, either of them. And this is especially very helpful when you would like to log in as user as sysdba from a remote machine. Why this cannot be helpful when we would like to log in as a sysdba with the from the remote machine? Because you have to be on the local. This is OS authentication. You have to be on the local machine. You have to be a member of a DBA group, and then only you will be logging in without the password. If you are not on the local machine, you must use the login ID password. You must use the password file. You must use the password file. So many people ask this question, can you create a database without a password file? The answer is yes. We have created the database without a password file. Then why do we need a password file? Login as sysdba remotely. Remotely is the main key. Remotely. Login as sysdba remotely. That is what the password file is required for. If you don't want to log in remotely as a sysdba, don't create the password file. You will be all right. So that is what the password file is for. So in the next section we will see the commands